What's going on, y'all? Willie PK back with another one. Welcome back, YouTube family. So I seen a few videos that came across my feed, and I thought they were kind of interesting. This first one is a collab that I would have never expected. You know, they say, "Oh, you wouldn't have seen this on your bingo card." The two pockets of the internet that I, am frequent in. There's the spiritual side, the Christian YouTube, and then there's also I don't know what you would call it, the realism YouTube featuring Asmon Gold. So what do you mean? And Asmon Gold, what do you mean covered what Asmon Gold was able to strongman, and they were able to come to an agreement, but we're going to see where they differ and what his takeaway was. So let me share this with you guys. Today we're reacting to "He Agreed With Me Until It Got Too Spiritual" by What Do You Mean? So let's go.
One of the biggest streamers on YouTube, who you may remember from his recent feud with Elon Musk, just reacted to my video in front of his 3.6 million subscribers. And although he's not a Christian, he nailed the core issue in culture better than most pastors.
Dealing with spiritual deception dressed as tribal loyalty.
He's right about that.
But when I brought up the gospel as the cure, that's when everything shifted. So in this video, I want to walk you through where we agreed, where we didn't, and why I still believe the gospel offers the cure that he's looking for. Now, to be honest, it almost pains me to point out our disagreements because we agreed on so much. For almost all of his video, it pretty much went like this.
Yep, the end because it feels like
this
survival. Part of why we
crazy, right?
Yep. Once it's eliminated, so
yeah, he's totally he's completely right.
So for the vast majority of his video, he seemed to be agreeing with me on almost everything I said, even agreeing with me on my core assessment of the problem.
The things that we subconsciously depend on to justify our sense of self-worth are what we can call value makers. We all have them, and they're usually good things, but they become dangerous when we treat them as foundational to who we are. We're constantly going to these value makers to tell us why we matter, and the easiest way to feel more valuable without even having to do anything is to look down on others who don't have what you believe makes you valuable.
Money or whatever.
You may need to watch the original video to get the full
So yeah, so he's going to get into it and break it down. I'm going to let him go, but it's like, why do you do what you do? What gives you value, and are you earning your value as ultimately, from the Christian perspective? He's going to tell you that Jesus is the one that deems us valuable because he gave his life for us. And then we get to learn our identity through that. But there's some interesting, back and forth and contentions. So let's take a look.
Context, but that's what I argued is the root why things feel so personal and divided today. And up until this point, he completely agrees with me.
So it's an easy way to immediately define a problem without having to think about it. No, I could call it a tribe. No, that's what it is. Yeah, he's totally he's completely right.
Okay, so it seems we agree on the problem, but if we're seeing the same problem, then why are our solutions so different? Well, that's because where you get value from determines everything else. And here's where he poses a solution to the value maker problem, in which he raises a really interesting solution, although I don't believe that it can actually solve the problem.
I think that if you build your identity on something that you didn't earn, you're always going to have problems, and you will have issues just down the line with like 50 different things. And so what you're really seeing in these cases is that people that are defining themselves on things that they can't control and they don't have any ownership of, the only people that do that are losers that don't have anything else going for them. So they take...
So I was thinking about this earlier when I was folding clothes. That's one thing my dad does. Shout out to my dad. He likes to, help out and make sure that we know that he's helping out with us. So sometimes my my stuff will be in the dryer. He'll go ahead and fold it, and I get to learn how to appreciate having a dad that does that. But what I was thinking about is, that, like what he just said, that's something that you don't earn. or that you didn't I didn't earn that uh that help from my dad. So it's like in me folding my own clothes, I learned how to have the work ethic to keep up with my life. You know what I'm saying? And then I have a sense of pride because of that. Um, and so it's kind of like I was just thinking that it's kind of like a balance between, what you've been given freely ultimately through Christ, and then what you contribute based on how you see yourself. You know, if you see yourself as someone that is capable and stuff like that, um, then you will go ahead and try to, accomplish things and stuff like that, and hold yourself with a level of self worth and self value, um, that would ultimately put you in like you'll show up to the world in a better way, than someone that just basically you don't value anything because everything's just given to you freely. So I feel like that's kind of what Asmon Gold's pointing at. But let me stop rambling.
Pride in things that they had no control over.
All right, now here's the thing. I think that he's absolutely right that part of the problem is that people take pride in what they don't work for. That's a recipe for disaster, which I articulated in my original video. However, I don't think that taking pride in what you work for solves the problem either. It seems to me that it has the same problem that we talked about earlier with people getting their value from things like working out, eating healthy, making a lot of money, and so on. In fact, I actually think I'd probably go so far as to say that I think that it actually can make the problem worse, because the more that people work for these things, the easier it is to look down on those that didn't work for those things. So I think that he's completely right to see it as a problem, but I don't think that his solution solves it. Okay, so as we just said, up until this point, it seems that we're in agreement on most things, until I brought up the gospel as the solution to that problem. And here's where personally I think things get really interesting. But first, we have to thank the perfect sponsor for a video like this, Ground News. Ground News gathers articles from over 50,000 sources and shows you how they're being covered across the political spectrum, letting you see the full picture. So, for example, when it comes to the possible pardon of Derek Chauvin, out of the 50 sources that have covered it so far, 42% lean right and 29% lean left, but they're covering the story from entirely different angles. The left emphasizes how people on the right are mobilizing to enable political violence. Then go ahead and go to groundnews.com/whatdoyoumeme and get 40% off of unlimited access with the Vantage plan. All right. Wow. Now back to how Asmon Gold was really with me until I brought up the gospel as the solution. All right. So when we get to the last 3 minutes of my video, this is where our disagreements started to show.
The problem isn't that we have value makers, it's that they can't fully affirm your self-worth because they were never designed to. And as Christians, out of everyone, we should know this because of the gospel. You know that you've truly internalized the gospel when you can know in your heart that Jesus didn't just die for you, he died for the very people who hate you, the people that you can't stand, the absolute worst racists in the world. You know that you've internalized the gospel if you know that, while also knowing that you're no more deserving of salvation than they are. And if that feels unjust when you look at them, it's because it is. It is unfair for him to offer them salvation. But it's also true when they look at you and believe that it's unfair for him to offer you salvation as well.
It's like the prodigal son.
You and your worst enemy are valuable because you were loved enough for the God of the universe to die for you. And not because you earned it, not because you deserve it, but only because he offered both of you his grace.
I think this is a, like, religion is like one component, and like if religion works for him, I think that's really good, and that's great for him, right? I know a lot of people that religion is an ordering force in their life and it improves their life. But I think it's like just a general kind of trend towards like cultural nihilism, and a degree where people just simply don't have any form of identity other than what they make up for themselves. And people have been divorced from like the tradition of their culture. They've been divorced from the religion of their culture. And they're kind of treated as this interchangeable business unit of like of a commodity. And I think that that's just not what people are.
Okay, so I actually think that he put his finger on something really important here. He's right. There's a growing cultural
Interesting.
nihilism where people no longer have any real sense of identity, and they're left just trying to invent themselves from scratch. And when that happens, identity becomes fragile. It's constantly shifting, and people start to feel like commodities, interchangeable, temporary, and easily replaced. So he's completely right to point that out. But here's where I think
I feel like I've heard that of that concept like uh culturally, or like more like a lower level. Like that's where you have people feeling like, oh, they need to go back home, they need to go back to Africa, they need to go back to wherever they go back to their roots. Because maybe some cultural nihilism has set in. Uh, and I guess it's from trying to come here, getting here, trying to pursue the American dream, but you know that roots, they feel like they get lost, whatever. Um, but on a macro perspective, you know, I guess if our home is the kingdom of God, being in relationship with our Father, and we're getting further and further away from that, then yeah, of course we lose our culture, we lose um a sense of who we are.
that the gospel takes his insight even deeper. The gospel message doesn't just give you an identity, it roots your identity in something unshakable and unchanging. And the problem with all of these other value makers is that they make you fragile because they're fragile. I mean, really just think about it. If your core value maker is how much money you make, when you're making a lot of money, then you're naturally going to get arrogant and start looking down on others. But when you're not making a lot of money, then you're going to feel worthless and empty. Or if your core value maker is in a person, well, people change, they're unpredictable, and eventually people die. So when it comes to these value makers, you're always going to be worried about losing them, which makes you insecure and fragile. And this is why I said that getting your value maker in the gospel is fundamentally different. Again, he's absolutely right here. People are looking for something solid and something that they didn't make up. But where we may differ is that I believe that the gospel gives you one identity that you don't have to build or defend. And honestly, I can't think of anything else that comes even close to that. Okay, let's keep going.
I want to interject, like, and I feel like that's one of the issues. That's what Ruslan just finished talking about, the prosperity gospel. Um, that being a marker or a value maker, like having a transactional relationship with God, to where you feel like He's gonna, like, if God's blessing you, then He's with you. But if He's not, quote unquote, blessing you, and you're not becoming rich, then you can't be in a relationship. It's like, or like, let's say, even like Abraham, let's say you had to wait 20 plus years for whatever God said was going to happen for it to happen. Especially now, they live however long back then, but waiting 20 years for seeing something God to happen, I don't know. Um, me personally, that's tough. But um, even if that is like a marker in your life, I lost my train of thought. Even if that being, like, if you have I was pointing at Abraham to say, like, even though he had to wait that long for something to come to pass, he still had a quote unquote true relationship with God. Um, you know, and I guess I was just thinking about me personally. It's like that that would be tough to to deal with, and it is tough. Even now processing some of the things. So having a prosperity gospel outlook on your faith and your relationship with God is going to be what do you mean is saying is that it's faint, it's fickle, and ultimately has you just wavering. So that's not a good frame of mind to have, I guess, is what I was saying.
Because I think it continues to get more and more interesting. You don't
It's
have
not
to
special.
defend your race like your worth depends on it. You don't
Yeah.
have to drag the other side down just to lift yourself up. Your identity is no longer built on the tribe, it's built on the cross. So, yes, fight for justice, but don't fight like the world. Don't cling to your tribe like it's your salvation. It's not.
This whole world and all of these worldly titles causing division are fading away. Jesus didn't die to save your race. He died to save your soul.
I mean, this is religion, but I think the real problem is the government. The government not adhering to the law and not enforcing the law accurately and treating people fairly is what causes these race wars. That's what really causes it to happen.
Okay, I agree with him, and I totally see what he's getting at. But I also think that if we look at any other government in the world, then we're going to start seeing the same problems. I mean, it seems clear to me that the problem goes far beyond governments or race. Like, even if everyone is the same race, they're still going to find ways to fight and separate. Even when people start off as having the same political beliefs, they eventually still splinter off and separate. The deeper reason why is because when people look to these value makers cause people to stress the differences between themselves and others rather than stressing the similarities. And by the way, of course, this even happens with religion, which is why you see so much conflict in places where people largely hold to the same religious beliefs. It's the same problem. When people believe that they're ultimately valuable because they're right and other people are wrong, then naturally they're going to start looking down on others who they don't believe are, and then we're back in this same cycle. Maybe you've even seen it in your family, how easy it is to reduce people to what side they're on. And this really is heartbreaking, especially when kids grew up thinking that their value depends on how right they are. But in the gospel, we're all united by our need for a savior, and none of us were capable of earning our salvation. So it's the great neutralizer. And all of this is even more important to keep in mind while listening to what he says next.
Because, I mean, the fact is, like, religion helps, but, I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of people in like, the Middle East, for example, are religious, and they've been fighting each other forever. So, like, it's not like religion solves the problem of, like, war, right?
Okay, I actually really appreciate him making this point because not only is it a great objection, but it also gives me the opportunity to clarify something that I didn't in my original video. To be clear, I don't think that religion solves the problem. As I said earlier, I think that it falls into the same issue as any other value maker. What I'm talking about is not having religion as a value maker, but instead the truth of the gospel message as your value maker. The message that you are fully loved and accepted, not based on how hard you work and what you've done, but instead based on the fact that the God of the universe died in your place, so that way when you stand before God on Judgment Day, your salvation is based on the life that He lived rather than the life that you lived. So this gives you an identity that...
And that was the gospel. In, what was that, 10, 12 seconds? So shout out to him. But of course, if you never heard the gospel before, Christ died in your place as our atonement for humanity so that we could be put in rightful position. And so now it's just up to us to receive it, believe it, receive it, and live out our newfound lives.
If you truly believe it, it can't make you arrogant since you didn't do anything to earn it. And it can't make you more insecure since Christ loves you so much that He died for you and fully accepts you. So this is a different solution altogether. And by the way, don't get me wrong. I get why you might think that I'm just offering one religious solution over another. I get that. But the truth is, I'm really not, because religion tells you to earn your self-worth, and the gospel says that it was offered to you before you could even earn it. Okay, but next he brings up yet another good point and possible objection to what I'm saying, and what he says next.
Speak the truth.
You see what I'm saying?
Do it from a place of peace, not panic. From grace, not ego. From a secure identity, not a fragile one. Because in Christ, you were fully known and fully loved. You were worth dying for, and not because you had the right views or anything good that you've done, but because of who He is. And when that's your foundation, you can finally stop fighting for your value because it was already secured at the cross. Hey, thanks so much.
That's what I've always felt like with me, right? Is that's why I don't really like, I don't spend a lot of time, like people like insult me or like they'll get mad at me or like be hostile to me. Is that like, I don't really think that it matters what those people say because like my own personal value is what really matters the most. And so like, if I'm happy with what I'm doing, and I'm satisfied with what I'm doing, then other people's perspective on it doesn't really make a difference.
Okay, now that was a really interesting point. Basically, the point is, if you don't get your core value maker from others, he believes that you can be stable if you find it within yourself. And I get why that's so appealing, especially in today's culture. But there's a catch. The issue is this: what happens when you feel bad about yourself or you let yourself down? What happens when you don't live up to your own expectations, or even when you feel empty, even though you're doing all the right things? Or, given what he said earlier about building your own success, what happens if everything comes crumbling down and, God forbid, you lose your entire career and all of your money? If your identity is built entirely on how you feel about yourself, then your value rises and falls with your mood, your success, or your self-image. And let's be honest, none of those things are stable. That kind of value just becomes another form of pressure. You're still performing, only now you're performing for yourself. So personally, I think that Paul nailed it in 1 Corinthians 4, where he basically says, I don't care what you think about me, I don't care what others think about me, and I don't even care what I think about me. All that matters is what Christ thinks about me. And it's because Paul knew that he was perfectly accepted due to God's grace that he had a stable value maker that gave him this confidence. Okay, so after this, Asmon goes on to reiterate some of the points that he made earlier, and he goes on to be super kind and tells people to like my video and sub to my channel, which I really appreciate. Okay, now given his entire video and everything else, here's my overall thoughts. Asmon Gold raised some really thoughtful objections, and I actually agreed with a lot of the problems that he pointed out because I see the same problems that he does. And honestly, that was refreshing in a world where so many people don't see and engage with nuance. So him and I agree on the problem, we just disagree on the solution. I don't think that we just need better government, or stronger tradition, or even just a stronger sense of self. I think that we need something deeper than that, something strong enough to carry the weight of our identity without turning us into enemies of each other. And that's what I believe the gospel uniquely offers. Hey, I hope you found this conversation helpful, and I hope that it gave you clarity or language for something that you've been feeling but couldn't quite articulate. And if so, I'm thankful for that. In a world where Christian content either feels too soft or too combative, we're aiming for something different. Unadulterated truth, but with humble grace. We want believers to be confident in their faith while also leaving skeptics curious enough to stick around. So if that's a message that you want to support, one of the most impactful ways to help our message is by partnering with us on Patreon. The link's in the description. So go and show some love to Asmon Gold's video and check out my original one if you haven't, and I'll see you there. All right? Thanks for watching.
That was pretty good. Just thought I'd share that with you guys. And then this next video I had is just some encouragement. Is God possibly calling you to be a creator? From 3 years ago, from a guy, or 3 months ago, from a guy, Untraditional Gospel. Let's take a look. I actually haven't watched this video yet, so.
He created. You were made in the image of God. Capitalism will label most of you, even you watching this video, as a consumer. Right now, you're actually consuming this content. God is calling you to be a creator. It's very interesting because in the beginning, God created. But the Bible also says that the devil is a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. So we have God as a creator and we have the devil as a consumer. Very interesting revelation. God is calling you to create. In John chapter 7, verse 38, it says that those who believe in him, as the scripture has said, streams of living water will flow out of them. Does that sound like consumption? That sounds like creation. You're creating streams of living water based off the living water that's living inside of you. God is calling you to create. I get it. We have to eat. We have to receive wisdom. We have to receive information and learn from that. But why are we learning that? So that we can become wise and create for our neighbor. Man liveth not off bread alone, but yet we overeat all the time. We think we need food to survive. Jesus made it plain and clear that man liveth not off bread alone. It's not about consumption. It's more blessed to give than it is to receive. God wants you in a state of giving. How do you give? You create. You either create a blessing, create an opportunity, or create some kind of system for others to benefit. And you do that with them in mind, not yourself. If you're creating with yourself in mind, then you're still creating with a heart of consumption, because you're creating with the intent to receive. Your heart is telling on you. You have to create from a sense to give. For God so loved the world that he gave.
He's cooking. Yep, this, this is a better mindset. It's not better, it's a more mature, a more mature mindset. So let's see what else he has to say.
outward flowing, but as a consumer, you're consistently inward flowing. I want everything to come to me. I want it to come to me. I want it to come to me. This is my own problem, y'all. I hope that this doesn't come off as me trying to criticize you as much as it is that I'm preaching to myself, because I know I'll return to this video for me. I've had this problem for years. I've been on the side of consumption, and it has consumed everything around me, including my own will to live. And there's a very interesting verse about that in Proverbs chapter 21, verse 25. It says this: the desire of the sluggard kills him, for his hand refuses to labor. All day long he craves and craves, but the righteous gives and does not hold back. Take this right here. Just break this down for a second. I had to. I read it like 5, 6, 7 times before it really clicked for me. But here's what I got from it. The desire of my sluggardness, the desire of my laziness, or the desire of my consumption created an appetite in me that was greater than what I truly needed. But because I consumed so much, or was consistently consuming, my appetite grew. But my hands didn't match my appetite. My work ethic didn't match my consumption. And therefore, that leads to a depletion of resources. How much return do you get on an investment of $0? Nothing.
So basically saying like, whatever discipline you're trying to instill, it's like it needs to be an equal and opposite response to that which you were trying to wean off out of your life. So it's like, okay, you wanna get more active. Well, every hour of TV I do, I'm gonna do an hour of exercise, which that's a long shot for a lot of people, but that's like a perfect example. Let's continue hearing what the insight is from Proverbs.
Because you have nothing to invest. You've consumed all your resources. You've consumed all your time scrolling. You've consumed all your money spending it on food and pleasures. You consumed all your friends' energy because all you do is complain. You're consuming so much that you consume your entire life away from you. This was my story, and it drove me into a depression because I was consuming and not producing. I was a whole influencer, y'all. I've had this channel for years, and I stopped producing. I stopped doing exactly what God called me to do and using my voice as a light, and it started to eat me alive because I didn't have the resources. I didn't have the will to live. I was saying, Lord, how can I be a blessing if I have no money? He was like, well, you weren't creating anything. You have a voice. That voice is free. It costs me no money to produce content, but there's so much to gain from creating this content because, one, I'm blessing somebody that needs to hear the same message, and I'm changing their perspective. Hopefully I'm changing your perspective. And as I change your perspective, I'm creating value for you. And if I get better at this process of creating value, this exchange of value provides resources, skill, favor. Favor because I'm acting in accordance with God. I'm creating instead of trying to consume. It's more blessed to give than it is to receive. That's Bible. Increases me in skill because the more that I do this, the more I perfect the skill of preaching and teaching and spreading the gospel and the good news. So I'm gaining more skill. It's gaining wisdom because as I grow, I know I'm not going to be perfect at this. I know I'm going to stumble. I know there's going to be some shortcomings, and people probably in the comment section will correct me. And through that correction, I will become wiser. Through my failures, I will become wiser. I'm not going to look at those failures as shortcomings and badges of dishonor or reasons for me to go back into a state of consumption. I'm using them as a bouncing board to propel me forward to create.
So in a roundabout way, this is about, your mindset of how you should approach YouTube. It's like, God's given you gifts, and obviously this technology is the new way of how people can express those gifts and stuff like that, make room for them, in the pursuit of having a business, everything that comes with it. But he's expressing that, it can even be deeper. You just like how we talked about those markers, you want to find your sense of fulfillment in pursuing how God has created you, and for you to have the significance that God wanted you to have, not just based on the pursuit of things. So let's see.
Create even better than I did before. And not only that, I want to say bottom of the totem pole monetarily, just by doing it, just by producing the content. Not only can you make a little extra change on here being a producer of some content, but don't even think about it from the content standpoint. As you produce value for people, people are going to come knocking at your door for the value that you hold. That creates a cycle of abundance, because as they come for the value that you hold, they provide value to you. They give you more resources, but you don't use those resources to consume for yourself. You use those resources to create even more opportunities for even more people, to make even more impact on the world. That is a true cycle of abundance. But if you're in this for yourself, you are still in a heart of consumption. And a heart of consumption is crazy work. I actually made a little circle chart, kind of.
That's real, you know, especially looking at it. Okay, let's say you're a new creator. You want to, of course, like I just said, you have your desires. You want to have a business. You want to see yourself rise out of the ranks. But again, what is your why? Like he has his words in the back. Let me go. He has his words in the back. Together we can dream, believe, lead, and achieve. So he already is on the team player mindset, and like what he's talking about, producing opportunities for others to come up alongside of him. There's another guy on here on YouTube called Mediocre Tutorials. He just posted recently a video about how he grew out of basically being the best individual contributor, and how he had to learn that he had to embrace team to get to the next level. So, from his background, what we can see is he's already on that growth track. But even some of the words that I took down, let me see if I can find it. Some of the words and the mantras that I took down early on while I was thinking about starting this up. Inspire, invest, innovate, encourage, entertain, and energetic. Just words that, you should dwell on, that will cultivate the impact, the kind of impact that you want to have. So, what are your guys' why? What are some of your words that um you find meaningful, that produce impact in your life?
Describing what a circle of consumption looks like. If you overconsume, you become tired. The same way that you get the itis when you eat too much food, you become tired. Not only that, you ate all the food. You didn't save no leftovers because you wanted to eat it all right there. As you do that, not only do you not have food for tomorrow, but you're too tired to work to get more food. No resources, no work, you're lacking. Then you say to yourself, well, I want to be in line with you, God. I want to be a blessing to other people. You consumed all the blessings. You could have took half that plate and gave it to somebody who was hungry. You didn't need all the food. Same way as you didn't need all the money. This is where tithing comes into play. Some people have an issue with giving 10% back to God when God gave you 100%. You're over consuming. You're living above your means. You're living above your needs. Now, I get there's some people in hard situations that might need to consume more, but I can almost guarantee you that if you are diligent and your hands get to working and you become prudent with your finances, that your situation will start to change. If you start seeking more wisdom with how you work and how you use said resources, instead of consistently figuring out how you can consume them.
And that's circling back to what we were talking about previously, that, I had mentioned that Ruslan was talking about the prosperity gospel. It's not the prosperity gospel to tell someone that if you live your life in God's ways, that you will see an increase in your overall well-being, overall output in life. It's not saying that it's a one for one. If you press this button, you're gonna get X, Y, and Z. You're gonna get $1,000,000 and stuff like that. That's not what that is. It's just saying that, prosperity is in the Bible. This is without a doubt within it, and there's principles of in what he's pulling from in Proverbs is just that. But it's, I don't know, people have like problem with cause and effect. Even me in my own life is like, some of the ideas I can understand where people get frustrated. Um, but nevertheless,
How can you use them to serve even more people? Because as you serve more people, you in return get value. Everyone wants to talk about the law of attraction, but let's talk about the law of effect. However many people you can effectively change is the exact amount of value which you will receive in return. God is calling you to create, and not just content. Not everybody's supposed to be a content creator. Content is cool, but it's not for everybody. Some people can't do well in front of a camera, but you can create an opportunity. You can create a program. You can create a group. You can just create space for someone who needs a person or a voice. You can create hope for someone who is hopeless by just helping that person that's begging you for money or for food or for something. Being that good neighbor, you have just created an opportunity for that person to encounter God in the form of a man. You are the representative of Christ in every room you walk into, and you can create a sanctuary in a living room. It's in you. God's in you, and he's looking for you to create that light for someone else. When it says a light that's put on a hill is not supposed to be put under a lamp, it's the light of God in you shining out. You're supposed to create the light for the room. God wants you to create. So create. Right now you're spending.
Yep. So if you guys appreciated that little sense of encouragement, little sense of direction, and some little cultural commentary, like and subscribe. Definitely like and subscribe to What Do You Mean? Like and subscribe to this guy. Forgot what his name is. Untraditional Gospel. And for more commentary, cultural commentary, entertainment, and news coverage, you guys like and subscribe to Willie PK, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.